episode of the High Performance CEO Show. I'm your host, Sebastian Schieke, business angel, investor, and the founder of Sebastian Schieke & Company. And today I'm talking with Julian Nolan.
Hi.
Hi, Julian. Julian is the founder and CEO of Iprova, the company that is reinventing invention. We want to talk about this. Julian studied at the University of Essex and Cambridge. He also spent some time at the IMD. I also spent time at the IMD, so it's an amazing university. And his single goal is to use data and algorithm to create valuable inventions in a robust, reliable, and systematic way. And I actually quite like this approach. So welcome to the show, Julian.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Really appreciate you inviting me along.
Yeah, it was a bit of a challenge to get you on the show. You're a very busy man, and your head of marketing had to basically approve the show. So you really checked us out and checked that what we produce is valuable. And I'm really glad to have you here. I like your approach. I like this repeatable. You create a repeatable process to create invention. Can you tell us a bit more about how did you get there and where do you use this approach in today's life?
Of course. So I guess my motivation for starting the company goes back to experience that I had working in other organizations, like, for example, the R&D labs of EMI Music, like, for example, Honeywell. And what I saw in these companies, and actually other companies as well, is that despite the importance of technical inventions, the way that they were very often created was rather artisanal and, in a sense, almost haphazard. So inventions go on to result in new products. They go on to result in patents. And inventions are really at the very heart of a company. And many companies actually have a very significant part of their valuation associated with the value of their intellectual property assets, which of course also include the patents they own. So you have these incredibly important acts of creativity in the form of technical invention. But the way those are coming about certainly is quite fortuitous in many respects. And I think that's quite well illustrated if you think about the way inventions are often thought about and the way, a lot of people have in their minds of how inventions come about. So imagine that you meet someone for a coffee, you could learn something new, you put two and two together in your head, and you come up with a great idea. Now, who's to say you couldn't have met someone a week earlier, a month earlier, or a year earlier and come up with that same great idea at an earlier moment in time? Or who's to say you couldn't have met someone different and learned something even better and come up with an even better and more valuable idea? So invention today, and really what motivated me to kind of create the company, is subject to this rather fortuitous and serendipitous interaction between the information that triggers inventions and the people who create those inventions. And so the idea I had was to really use technologies like big data and AI to try to get a much more systematic and deterministic interaction between the information that can result or trigger an invention and the people who create those inventions.
So basically also put a business focus on the inventions and not only in creative and artistic view. Often we have creative people, they invent new things, but we miss the business focus, right? And putting this into a systematic approach and creating a service and product out of that.
That's extremely important because when I talk about an invention, I talk about an idea that has got three properties. First of all, if you create an invention that can support a patent filing, the invention has to be new. If you're second, you're too late. So in a sense, it's all about speed and being first. Now, an invention, of course, clearly has to have commercial value. So we're not in the business of coming up with nice ideas that sound good on paper, but which actually do not solve a problem or have no commercial value. So the idea or the invention must be valuable. It must create value for the company that owns it. Now, the third property is maybe not so obvious. It's surprise. So if you think about the kind of creativity that you like to consume, it might be literature, it might be music, it might be art. Probably the kind of things that you like to see or read or hear are similar to what you've heard before or seen before or read before, but also a little bit different. They're a little bit surprising. And it's the same for technical invention. The best technical inventions have got this kind of elegance, this surprising quality to them as well. And so the inventions that we aim to enable the creation of using our software platform are inventions that, first of all, are new. They're ahead of the competition. Secondly, they're valuable. And thirdly, they're also surprising. And it's this surprise that also then helps them to contribute value. And I think that's a very, very important property of an invention, of any artistic creation.
That's very interesting. I mean, basically you work for the Apples of the world, right? I mean, you're helping them bring out surprising. I mean, we all like these surprises when one of these big players brings out a new toy. In the last few years, they've been a bit not so innovative, but I think this is the kind of invention we will talk about.
That's right. Surprise can come in many different ways, and I can give you an example. Unfortunately, all the examples I have are quite technical, but one way you can introduce surprise into an invention is by repurposing existing components for an unintended and unexpected purpose. So one of the inventions that we created for a big mobile phone company is this. So we, using our invention platform, discovered a new problem. Now, a new problem is one of the things that can trigger an interesting invention, because if the problem is new, the invention that solves it is also likely to be new. And we found someone complaining about a problem that we'd never heard before. And that is that mobile phones are getting thinner, which of course we all know. But because they're getting thinner, they're also getting more difficult to pick up on a flat surface. No. We'd never seen that before. For us, that's a new problem. And now, at the same time, we also know that today mobile phones have got a wireless charging capability. And what that means is you've got a coil of copper wire in the phone, and you've got a charging mat. And that charging mat also has a coil of copper wire as well. Okay. And we also know that mobile phones today have got a proximity sensor in them as well, right? And the way the charging works is that you put your mobile phone on the charging mat and you have an inductive link between the two that induces a current to flow in the coil in the phone and charges the battery, right? If you think about this problem and you think about those components, it's possible to create the following invention. So imagine that you've got your mobile phone, it's on the charging mat, you reach to grasp the phone, just at the moment you're about to grasp it, the phone detects the proximity of your hand, and based upon that, power is applied from the battery through the wireless charging coil. So using it in reverse. That, of course, turns the wireless charging coil into an electromagnet, and that creates a field opposite to the one being created by the charging mat. And as a result of that, the phone is slightly levitated into the user's hand. Okay, there's not by much, probably by 2 or 3 millimeters, but just enough for you to easily get your fingers underneath. Now, this invention is surprising because you're repurposing existing components of the phone for an unintended, unexpected purpose. So there's no additional components that are needed to implement this. But by doing that, you are solving this emerging problem in a value-creating way. And so that's what I mean when I talk about surprise. It doesn't... There's a few different ways.
So it's not the new iPhone, which comes out with lots of new or a complete new feature on a product. It's something more subtle in the end.
Typically, yes. It would normally be a feature of a product rather than the product itself. And you can bring surprise to an invention in a number of different ways. So that particular way where you repurpose existing components for an unintended and unexpected purpose is one way. But another way would be that you include the human body as part of the system, for example. And we've got many inventions that also do that. So when we create these inventions and when we design our invention platform to enable their creation, we are always very conscious of trying to create, if you like, ideas with these 3 properties: novelty, value, and surprise.
And how does such a process look like on a very high level? I mean, you created a platform, an AI platform, basically. Yeah. I mean, how can the normal user who doesn't have a background in innovation and in IT and technology, how can they understand how this process looks like? I mean, you have a problem, or someone gives you a new problem. How does it work?
Yeah, so that touches on a very important part of our vision. So when I look at most large enterprises today, they have many people in them who can invent and who do invent from time to time, but they have an incredibly small number of what you could think of as being efficient, prolific inventors. Normally you can count those on one hand, even in very, very large enterprises. And at the heart And at the core of what we're trying to do is to make invention a much more accessible skill. So everyone in an R&D organization can invent. Maybe people in marketing can invent. Maybe people in business can also invent. And so your question really touches at the very kind of heart of what we're trying to do. We're trying to, in a sense, democratize invention, to empower people with the skill of invention who might not otherwise have had the ability to do so. So making our software work in a way that people who are maybe still slightly technical, but who wouldn't normally count themselves as inventors is incredibly important for us. And the way it works is that first of all, we model and we characterize a target invention area. And then we're able to deliver the inventive information in that area in such a way that it can be understood by people who have a moderate level of technical skill and who are then able to bring together the invention based upon that. Now, today, there is still some training needed to use the software, but in 6 months' time, that will be reduced or eliminated altogether. And that's really very much in line with this vision that we have of making invention a truly accessible skill across a whole organization, whether that organization is large or small. And something else that we really want to do when we do that is to empower the people to invent who are maybe in more market-facing roles, who have a great empathy with the customers that a company has. Because very often the people who are creating the inventions are rather disconnected and not representative of the people that a company is trying to sell to. And so that also then helps us to ensure that the inventions that come out also are more likely to have commercial value as well. And and I can give you an analogy that might also help to explain this a bit better. So if you think of inventing a little bit like cooking, what the software is doing is to bring together the ingredients that you need. Now, if you use our software as the chef, you likely will have access to ingredients that no other chefs have access to, because these ingredients are maybe very, very new, or maybe they're very, very distant from the area where you're cooking. Okay, so maybe they come from a different geography, a different region. They're very, very distant. And so therefore, they're a lot less likely to be known to you or other chefs who are cooking similar dishes to you. Now, because you have ingredients that other chefs are unlikely to have, you're able to come up with dishes that no other chef is likely to be able to create. And if you bring together those ingredients in the right way, you can make those dishes very tasty and therefore very popular for your customers, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a very clever way, because I work a lot with CEOs from tech companies. And tech people are very singular focused. They are very focused on their technology. And sometimes it's hard for them to express, for example, what they do. Because many of them, they don't really speak English. They speak tech. And I think the same when we talk about innovation and when we see these innovators, the people who are really focused on creating innovation, they are often very, as you said, very technical, very focused on the area. But if you enable and empower people in your organization on customer-facing functions, they see problems in a different way. And often they have a different mindset, a marketing mindset or a sales mindset. And when you enable them to use the software and create solutions for customers and clients, this is a very clever idea. And as you said, you're democratizing the invention process. So you probably work with the large organizations of the world. I mean, in your profile, you mentioned Apple, Google, Amazon. Can also smaller organizations use your software, or is it really an enterprise product?
We do a wide range of different enterprises. And those companies that you mentioned, they actually, in their own publications, they reference patents that are based on our inventions. We've started by working with these large companies because we wanted to develop our technology, and we wanted to also include lots of best practice in the product that we have developed. So it's very good for us to work with, for example, companies like Philips, who are leaders in the kind of innovation and invention area. But of course, we can also work with smaller companies as well. Now, we have actually already worked with a number of SMEs. And of course, SMEs are also able to utilize our software as well.
Do you have a special industry you focus on? I mean, what is the best use case for your product? What kind of companies and organization can really benefit most from this approach?
So our focus is on physical science. So there are other companies a little bit like Iprova who have, for example, a life science focus, like, for example, Benevolent AI, who are very much involved in developing AI for the use in drug discovery. Now, our focus is very much on physical science, but the areas that we cover in physical science are very broad. So our software has been applied to create inventions in areas ranging from small modular nuclear reactors through to mobile devices, through to, for example, stationery and shaving for companies like BIC, for example. So a very, very broad range of different application areas across physical science. And we also partner with a number of companies like, for example, Microsoft, and in automotive with Lotus. And there, what's quite interesting about our partnership with Lotus is that very often when you create an invention, you need to prototype that invention and then ultimately design a product that incorporates that invention as well. So we can invent extremely fast. So we, using our technology, are able to really, if you like, reduce the time to invention. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But what Lotus is then able to do is to very, very rapidly prototype those inventions. And then, of course, do the product design based upon those as well. So we're really shortening the time between creating inventions that address a market need through to creating products that then incorporate those inventions.
This is very interesting, actually. I mean, especially in today's world, there's so many big problems which we as humanity have to solve. And shortening the time to create solutions is one of the game changers. And where do you see the future of invention going? Is this more like an industrialized process in the future, where more like an industrialized approach?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So an invention, in my view, can be triggered in one of three ways. It can be a new problem, can be a new scientific discovery, or it can be a new technological advance, which in itself may be an invention. Mm-hmm. So in general, as the world advances, as the world evolves, there are more problems, there are more scientific discoveries, and there are more inventions that result in technological advances. And as a result of that, the number of possible permutations for future inventions increases dramatically. So in a sense, the need to invent and the opportunities to invent are growing every day. So there will never again be as few opportunities to invent as there are today, simply because the world will be a different place tomorrow. There'll be more discoveries, there'll be more problems, and therefore that drives more of an opportunity to invent. And so alongside that, there's also a need to invent in a more systematic way. I wouldn't necessarily say industrial, but you definitely need a higher volume of inventions. And actually, one of the reasons why Iprova exists now rather than in 10 years' time or 10 years past is that now it's getting more and more difficult to create those inventions that matter. And it's getting more difficult because there's an ever increasing amount of information in the world. This year, there will be about 3 million scientific articles that are published. And at the same time, the products that we use every day, they're typically the result of conversions between previously unrelated domains. Like your mobile phone, it can make phone calls, it can play games, it can be a fitness tracker. These used to be separate products, but now they're found in one product. Now, that's a problem because people, ironically today, are ever more specialized. It's no longer enough to be a computer scientist. It's no longer enough to be a specialist in AI. You need to be a specialist in one aspect of AI, like NLP. And out of necessity, therefore, people are very, very specialized in what they do. And again, out of necessity, they have, therefore, more of a telescopic view. So it's getting more and more difficult for them to identify advances outside of their field in a prime optimal way that might be relevant to creating inventions in their field. And this is a growing problem. So not only do you have more and more need to invent, more and more problems, more and more scientific articles, your people's ability to invent, at least to create those inventions that are maybe capturing cross-domain advances that are consistent with the products of today, is actually reducing because they're more and more specialized in their field. And so this is one of the key problems that we're trying to solve with our software. It's really almost like a paradox. You know, in one sense, people are burdened by their knowledge, but in another, they need to come up with these inventions that are very broad. So you have a telescopic view on one hand, but actually to invent, you need this incredibly broad view and to do it in real time because invention's also all about timing. It's a bit like stock market trading. Your ability to invent is not necessarily related to the absolute size of your brain. It's related to the information that you have access to. And I think I'm not a stock market trader myself, but I think it's similar to trading, right? It's all about having the right information at the right time to invent in a very time optimal way. And what we're trying to do is to enable people to come up. Well, what we're not trying to do, we're not trying to enable people to create inventions that can't otherwise be created. By definition, those inventions would be impossible to create, or they would have no value because otherwise they would be certain to be created. But what we are trying to do is to enable the creation of those inventions that do have value and can be created to be created at an earlier moment in time by users of our software, because it's all in the timing. It's all about, in a sense, being first, and not only being first, but as far ahead of the competition as possible to get that commercial advantage, not only in terms of finding a patent, but also in terms of having the awareness of that market. Exactly. Yeah.
You say, and I completely agree, we're getting more focused, more experts, more singular focus in certain aspects of a topic. So our expertise is more channeled into a small aspect of a bigger problem, which reduces our ability to look at the bigger problem and create an invention which solves the need, which we probably don't see because we are so focused on this small element of our area where we're working on, right?
That's true. I'll give you a trivial example. So you might be an expert on autonomous vehicle control systems, and you might know everything there is about controlling an autonomous vehicle, but you might not know about the latest advances in fitness trackers. And therefore, it might not occur to you that maybe there's a nice invention to be had where you track if someone's met their fitness objectives for the day. And if they haven't, you drop them some distance from where they live and make them complete the rest of the journey by walking rather than by taking them in the car so they can complete their objectives. So it's basically, it's all about having this awareness of advances in other areas. And an area, it might just be a different part of the value chain or bill of materials of a product. It doesn't necessarily need to be a different vertical. It could just be, you're focused at maybe the system level and maybe there's an advance at like the detailed hardware level, but which is relevant to triggering an invention at the system level. So it can go kind of vertically as well as up and down through the, if you like, the bill of materials and the value chain, as well as horizontally across different markets. And I think giving people the power of that information in their field and enabling them to invent with it can result in many good ideas.
I could see many areas who would benefit from this approach. Let's talk a couple of minutes about your journey, your story. How did you end up founding this company? I mean, you have a background in electronics, right? And you started in Essex and Cambridge. So what was your journey?
Yeah, so above all, my journey is that I'm a passionate engineer. I have been actually making electronic circuits since I was 7 or 8. And I have always been extremely curious about the way things work. So also from the age of 7 or 8, I've been taking things apart and actually causing complete chaos in my parents' house by taking the TV apart, radio apart, everything I can lay my hands on. And I think it's that kind of curiosity that drove an interest in invention. Because if you're curious, you want to know how things work. You might not always be right, actually, in your assumptions. But if you don't know how something works, you might make a guess as to how it works. And maybe actually your guess is an improvement on how it actually works. And so I think this kind of curiosity and trying to satisfy this curiosity and my genuine passion for electronic engineering really laid their foundations for wanting to set up my own company. And I went and, studied in the UK. Originally, I'm from a fishing village called Cromer in Norfolk. And then I did my undergraduate degree in University of Essex in electronic engineering. By the way, fantastic, really fantastic course. I think that really set me up on my subsequent career. I then went to Cambridge to do a course in business, which again was really amazing. And then I also did a master's at the time, neural networks, which has since become machine learning and AI. So I had this kind of combined background in electronic engineering and machine learning. I then started my career working in the US. I went to work for a company called National Instruments in Austin, in Texas. And that was also a really, really fantastic experience. And I then, after some years, returned to the UK to join a spin out from EMI Music. And the spin out was called Cypher. And what Cypher did was to take some of the research that was carried out by the R&D team of EMI Music and really spin out companies based upon that research, based upon the patent positions that have been created in that research. And the idea was that we would really engineer the company with a view then of listing the company on the London stock market. And that happened actually in year 2000 in the dot-com boom, which created lots of excitement within the business. And it was in itself a very interesting story. And I think that, it really fueled my desire to do a couple of things. One was to create my own high-tech startup. And I think it also gave me a lot of information around how inventions were created, because one of the employees of that company was Sir Godfrey Hounsfield, who was the Nobel Prize winning inventor of the CT scanner. And it kind of got me thinking about how inventions came about and whether it was possible to use things like neural networks, which I'd learned about doing my master's degree, to maybe help improve the invention creation process. And I think that combined with my interest in electronic engineering and kind of curiosity about how things worked, that kind of paved the way for me then to set up Iprova.
I think this curiosity is very important. I mean, I also studied electroengineering actually in Darmstadt, and I also took things apart as a kid. And I miss this sometimes when I look at the current generation. Everything is available to them. Everything, they just Google something and they have the solution. Yeah. And back then, we really had to dig deep to get to the ground of a problem, and to understand how things work. And I think this is a very valuable skill when you want to go on a journey like you did. And I can only tell the younger generation that they really should try to pull things apart and to really get down on the bottom of a problem, and not just accept or use Google to just get the answer within a few mouse clicks. I think this is a very interesting, a very important skill.
Yeah, I think it's totally right, actually, because I think there's also something about how you acquire information. If you acquire the information very easily, I think that information doesn't have as much value to you as if you had to work to get that information, like by taking something apart, figuring out how it works. And I agree. I think it is a very important skill. And I think it also relates a little bit to the kind of buzz that you make when you create an invention. So what we're doing is to use technologies like AI to enhance the human ability to invent. What we're not doing is to automate invention per se. So it's not the machine creating the inventions. We're simply putting the human in a better place to create the invention. And I think that's actually very important, because when you create an invention, you get a real buzz, right? So it's a bit like when you take something apart and you figure out how it works, right? You get a real buzz by putting these kind of things together and coming up with an idea that maybe is elegant and surprising. And you get a real buzz from doing that. And I think it's really, really important to preserve that feel-good factor, that buzz, because I think that makes it quite a human process. I think if you simply have the machine generating ideas, it will become quite unrewarding and unsatisfying. And I think, therefore, going back to, taking things apart versus just looking on the internet, I think because you need to put time and effort in, it's much more satisfying than when you get an inventive output.
Exactly.
You just have the answer from the machine, then I'm not sure it might work in a technical sense, but I'm not sure it would be truly rewarding and truly motivating, therefore, to the users.
Yeah, we don't satisfy our needs, our deep needs with that, We don't grow by Googling something, I mean, you put it in, you got the answer, but you grow when you really go down deep on a problem, figure things out. And sometimes it's a frustrating process until you found a solution, and then you're really happy and enjoy the result. And you learned a lot, and you develop these important skills of finding solutions, this resourcefulness. I mean, for example, I grew up in East Germany, communist part of Germany. And I mean, obviously resources were very, very scarce there. We didn't have much, but this created this resourcefulness in me, to find a solution, whatever situation I was in, which then helped me a lot in being an entrepreneur and creating companies and bringing products and services into the market, because I really learned it hardcore as a kid or as a young person to create something out of nothing. And this is the same with learning this ability to solve problems by really going deep into a topic and taking the TV of your parents apart.
I think that really kind of resonates with me, because I think actually being resourceful and not being defeated in a sense is key to invention creation as well. Yeah. We're not necessarily trying to make the inventions easier to create, but what we are trying to do with our software is to make it possible, is to give people invention superpowers, so to speak. It's more about enabling them to create the right invention at the right time that has real value. But there is still something of an inventive burden there, so to speak. And I think to make the best inventions, you need a lot of those qualities that you mentioned. You need to be able to, be resourceful and basically always ask yourself, is that the best I can do? Or is there something better that you can come up with?
And sometimes I really wonder how we can support the younger generation in acquiring these skills. You cannot shut off the internet, you cannot tell them not to use Google, but there need to be a process, or there need to be a way that we really spark their thinking process and help them to have the demand that they want to understand things really from the smallest level, and not just accept the status quo.
Yeah, and I guess that's exactly what we're trying to do with our software, actually, because what we're trying to do, in a sense, is to move invention into the current era in which we live. Invention's an activity that, by and large, hasn't changed for 10 years, 100 years, most likely 1,000 years, right? And it's about time it changed. And that's exactly what we're doing. And I think I always also find it surprising that, given the importance of invention and given the desire to invent that many people have, invention's not taught, as far as I know, on any
school.
On any school. I might be wrong on that, but I just don't know of any school that teaches it. And I think that's probably a result that a lot of people think of invention as this rather artisanal skill, which is an art rather than a science. And a lot of the work that we do is to really understand the science behind the art in a way that we can capture that with our algorithms and make invention a much more accessible and systematic skill. And one of my personal ambitions is to actually support more kind of educational and training programs. So when people go to university, get a degree, one of the courses they can study is invention. I think I'd find that hugely satisfying, actually. And that would be a great endorsement.
I would love to study invention. Maybe we should go back to university at some point.
Exactly right. Hey,
Julian, it was an amazing conversation. I learned a lot. It's a fascinating topic for me. So I wish you all the best. I mean, you have a very important mission, and there are many problems in the world waiting to be solved. And I'm sure Iprova can contribute a large part to these challenges we all face. So thank you very much. Where can people find you? Where's the best way to reach out?
So they can find me at hello@iprova.com. Of course, feel free to check our website on iprova.com as well.
Okay.
Sebastian, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for your questions.
Awesome. Have an amazing day, and we will definitely stay in touch.